Love it. All right, guys. So welcome. My name is Dr. Jenny Clausen. I am the program director for JA Inspire here at Junior Achievement of Arizona. We are so excited to have you with us today for our second webinar of the day with Jose Patino. And Jose migrated from Mexico to Arizona at age 6 and is part of the 1% documented people in the US with a master's degree. Can you believe that? 1%. He's in a very elite club there. He's an educator and activist, and he became involved in the immigrant rights and Dreamer movement in 2019, and since then has been standing up against the injustices that face undocumented workers here in Arizona. We are thrilled to have Jose with us, and I can't wait for you guys to hear his message. He's incredible. So without further ado, let me hand it over to Jose.
Hello. And we're going to get a little bit of help with the just pulling up the slides. Okay. All right. So we'll get started. Again, a little bit about myself. As the doctor mentioned, I migrated to the US when I was 6 years old. I was originally from Mexico. I grew up in a small town called Rancho Jimenez. I put some of the pictures here, as you can see, when I was very little. And one of the things that from the small town that I always like to say is that about 100 people lived in that small town. It was very small farming agriculture. So when I was little, my mom would take me to go to the fields and before school, help them pick some of the corn, and then I'll go to school. And we migrated in 1996 with my dad. My dad had been here for several years. He worked in construction. He worked in Arizona, California, Michigan, Ohio, Florida, but he ended up settling in Arizona, and we came to reunite our family. The primary reason is we grew up very humble beginnings. All of us were in a small town. Everybody had the same thing, basically, is one of the things is we didn't have was like a refrigerator or running water or a restroom. So one of the things biggest shocking for me coming into the US was seeing an actual restroom. And I remember like how my brother used to play jokes on me. He said if I misbehaved, they would they would take me in the bathroom, and then when they would flush the toilet. But I got adopted to the US. It was challenging because I didn't speak the language. So when I came into the US, I failed first grade. Thankfully, I had a really great teacher. Her name is Mrs. Montoya, who helped me go to summer school, catch up, and learn the language. And then I loved summer school so much that I went to summer school my second grade, and then I went to go my third grade. And by the time I was in fourth grade, they didn't allow me to go anywhere anymore. But I focused around my education. The reason why was because my mom always told me, hey, we came to the US. You are undocumented, meaning you have lawful immigration status, and for you to be successful, I want you to make sure you have an education. And then my dad would take me on the weekends when I got a little bit older, when I was 12, 13 years old, take me to work in construction because he wanted me to learn a trade. He's like, if you are not successful in schooling, this is what's gonna be your future. And me working in the summer, so you can get something like it's really, really hot. That kind of motivated me more to be able to focus on my education. And I did so well that by my 8th grade year, I was the valedictorian of my class. I got the highest GPA in 8th grade and was able to get into a program at ASU called John Hopkins Center for Talented Youth. And I started to see like, okay, the school thing might have a future. And by the time I got into my high school years, I did really well. I finished top 2% of my class. I also did sports. My junior year, my cross country team won state for cross country for 5A Division II. And by that time, I applied to universities. ASU was my top choice just because that's the only school that I knew. And I always saw ASU in the college football and basketball games. And as I was previously mentioned, I got involved in more activism outside of school and organizing because at that time, my senior year, a law passed that said that if you didn't have lawful immigration status, you were not eligible for in-state tuition. And I went back home. I talked to my mom. We looked at the cost, which was going to be 3 times as much, and we weren't eligible for scholarships. And she's like, I'm sorry, but I cannot afford it. I was going to be the first one in my family to go to college. So I saw her crying afterwards because she was extremely sad that she saw that I had made a lot of efforts through high school to be able to get the grades and also be enrolled and get scholarships. So for me, I decided I was going to figure a way out. I thought like, hey, there was people out there who could potentially help me. So then I went to my counselor. My counselor sent me to other teachers. Teachers sent me to outside organizations. They sent me to colleges. So I was just traveling around in the Maricopa area as a high school senior, trying to figure out how I was going to pay for college. Thankfully, I was able to find a private scholarship for people like myself who didn't have lawful immigration status. Fast forward a little bit, I studied mechanical engineering in my undergrad at ASU, but when I graduated, I was also undocumented, so I was not able to work in that field. However, one of the things that my mom always and my dad always told me is like, you just have to keep going. You don't know how things are going to be, and you just got to make sure that you always prepare yourself, position yourself to be the best, whether it be in school, whether it be in work. After a couple years, the DACA program was introduced. If you don't know what the DACA program is, it allows people who came into the country as children to be able to work in the country, legally apply for a social security number and a driver's license. After that, I applied and I became a teacher. And that's where I got my master's degree from Grand Canyon University in secondary education. And in 2015, the Obama administration invited DACA recipients from all over the country to go and talk about the DACA program, educators, and the contributions that we're making to society. And that's something that for me, I was proud to be recognized, but I was more happy or had more joy for my parents, just because they had given so much for me to be here. When I was a little kid, I would wake up around 3:30 or 4 a.m. To basically help my dad get dressed or like help my mom do things. And my mom would send me in the mornings to go around the neighborhood and collect aluminum cans at that time for us to help us with just anything that I could do to help in the house. And I just thought that that was something recognition for them, the work that they have done instead of me. And then a little bit about, fast forwarding a little bit of myself is, in the center, you see my family. My mom and my dad are great examples for me to keep moving forward. I love to hike. So I have a couple of pictures of hiking in South Mountain as well as Chiricahua Mountain as well. And I love kayaking, not very good kayaking or swimming at all, but I just love adventures. And then the other one is of my little dog, her name is Zoe. She is just a beautiful little dog that helps me. And she is a princess, basically anything that we do, everything that she says we do. And this is a little bit about me. Wanted to talk about a little personal stuff before I went into a little bit of what Aliento and the work that we do. So in case you don't know what Aliento means, Aliento directly translates from Spanish to English to breath. But when you give Aliento to somebody, it's like giving words of encouragement. And then our mantra Aliento is transform trauma into hope and action. So what we believe is that at Aliento is where human potential is nurtured and not defined by immigration status. So many of us who grow undocumented or have undocumented siblings or parents often are often taught how many we think about the limitations first versus what are the potential possibilities. And one of the things that we want to make sure that we help this community is to see that there's good, there's possibilities. Yes, there's obstacles, but how do we figure way things around them? One thing about Aliento, and our mission of Aliento is that we serve undocumented DACA and mixed immigration status families. Again, families transform trauma to hope and action. And we are directly youth-led. The majority of our people that we work with are students in high school, community college, and university. We want to make sure that we stick to those principles. A little bit, we have 3 basic programs at Aliento. The first one is Cultiva, and that's what we do arts and healing programming. We use arts to help support the trauma that people have faced. A lot of the times, what we know with the immigrant community is that many of the community might be, the children are citizens, but their parents might be undocumented. And what we focus on is how do we support people going through detention, through family separation, and also what does it mean that even though you have been here in the country since you were a baby, but when you get to 15, 16 years old, you're not eligible for a driver's license or you're not eligible to work. in the same places that your friends and family are, you're not eligible for certain other benefits. At Nurture, we call it is leadership development plus ally engagement. We focus on supporting our young people, ages 7 to 24, and how to nurture that eagerness to have their voice be heard, whether it be through presentations, whether it be through events. So we focus on that, and then Transform is how do we apply the skills that we learned in both Nurture and Cultiva to help transform policy, whether it be at the classroom level, whether it be at the school level, city council, state or federal, or even just in themselves. How to advocate for oneself in the most effective way. And I know I threw up a lot of terms out there, but here's a couple of definitions. We define dreamer as anybody who is undocumented, specifically who came into the country as a child, and who qualifies under the DREAM Act. A DREAM Act is a piece of legislation that would grant a power to citizenship for people migrated to the country as children. DACA-mented and DACA are those specifically who have DACA status who qualified. What that does is people like myself, who is a DACA recipient, gets a work permit to be in the country lawfully for 2 years. Every 2 years we renew. We get a social security number, and for all intents and purposes, we are like everybody else, except that we cannot travel outside of the country unless we get a special special approval from the federal government. Undocumented, when we talk about that, is people who don't have immigration status. And then we also come up with another term called DACA eligible, and the reason that is because the DACA program has been closed for the last 2 years. So we've seen a lot of individuals who would normally have DACA status, but since the program has been closed, we see them a lot of it in high schools, middle schools, and colleges. So therefore, right now, they don't have immigration status. Mixed status. Mixed status is somebody within the family unit, whatever you define as a family, who lacks immigration status. A lot of the time, the majority of them are children who are citizens, but the parents are undocumented. And in Arizona, K-12, 1 in 10 students are undocumented. Again, the majority of them being US citizens or lawful immigration status, but their parents or a sibling who lives in the home is undocumented. And we wanted for you to also see what it means, right? So this is the population, what it means. We have elementary partnerships and mixed status, again, with the majority of the children there are citizens, but the parents are undocumented. We also have people like Denise Garcia, who is a US citizen, but her siblings and her parents are undocumented. And then we have people like Angel Palazuelos, who is an undocumented student and not eligible for DACA. So for him, he's gonna navigate school life as undocumented status. And then to the right, we have somebody like Blanca, who's a DACA recipient, older like myself, who has kids and is now in their 30s. And just a little more about Cultiva as well is that in the picture here, we have for Day of the Dead in Mexico, Dia de los Muertos, something that we want to celebrate and honor our loved ones who have passed. We make little skulls where we decorate them of things that our family members who have passed that they remind of us. So we have them every 3rd Saturday of the month. And then also we have open mics, as well as where we bring the community together, where people can dance, can sing, sometimes do poetry, sometimes share a funny story. We do have comedians there as well. And for us, we use that to be able to build community and also feel that people are not alone. One of the biggest things that we have seen, at least within the data and ourselves with Aliento, is that a lot of people are starting to feel by themselves, feel like there's nobody there out there to see them, and they don't feel heard. Again, a little bit of Nurture. It's leadership development. We do have fellowship programs that are from basically, it's an extended internship from September to May. We work with students. We do partner with clubs. If they have anything going on, so for example, we did a partnership with Orange County University around diversity recently. We did a partnership also with Mountain View in Mesa about just about the Latino heritage, and last year around Latino Heritage Month. One of the things that at least that we want to make sure is to happen is the students know that they have agency and that they're not alone. And again, a little bit of Transform. A lot of the work that we do in Transform is in the intersection of immigration status, education, and mental health. And what we try to do is how do we build a community so people don't feel like they're by themselves and feel that there's a collective behind them. And I talked a little bit about mixed status, but I wanted you to know these are the numbers nationwide. It's about 17 million people live in a mixed status. Again, 30% of US citizen children, about 10% are people like myself who came into the country at a young age, and they don't have clearly defined status. And then 60%, the majority of them are the parents of these individuals who are undocumented. And just to give you perspective, it's the same population as the whole state of New York, of the Netherlands, or Guatemala. And in Arizona, when we're talking about this population, it's about 100,000 who are considered undocumented, but 64,000 who are considered dreamers, 46,000 DACA eligible, and again, 25,000 DACA active. And again, there's differences between each of these categories. The reason why is because the DACA program is closed, so a lot of people who would be eligible could not apply. And again, to be eligible for the DACA program, you must have turned 15 years old. So there's a lot of people that we know who were elementary or junior high who were wanting to apply, but then they were not able to. And to apply for the DACA program, you basically have to submit all documentations that prove you have lived in the United States since you entered. So your school transcripts, your medical records, vaccinations, any of that to make sure that you have continuous presence. And one thing, also something that at least is important for us is that 2,000 Dreamers graduate every year from Arizona high schools. So every year, 2,000 undocumented students graduate from Arizona high schools. And for the longest time in Arizona, we didn't have access to in-state tuition. And that's why I'm part of the 1% of DACA recipients who have a master's degree or higher, because it becomes very challenging to pay out-of-state tuition and not have the ability to work legally to pay for it and not be eligible for a lot of these scholarships or financial aid programs. So my hope is that through the knowledge that I have acquired and the resources, make sure to pass those on so I don't become in the 1% and we become higher and higher to a point where it's just like everybody else. And one of the things that I wanted to talk a little bit more about around Aliento was the Transform, because that's where I focused a lot on, and specifically around in-state tuition for Dreamers, something that we're very proud of, because this is something that a campaign that was launched in 2018, and it was launched in 2018 because we had students who, like by me, who wanted to go to college, and they saw that the bill was $30,000 for ASU, and they were not eligible for these, for the normal scholarships that people would be eligible, and they were not eligible for financial aid. And they were like, hey, Jose, how can you help me? You were able to navigate this. And I was like, well, I'll try to help you find private scholarships. And we were able to help a couple of them. But as more and more students came, we were like, we have to make sure to change this policy. And that's the thing that we have done and advocated for. So currently, well, what we believe is all Arizona students should be eligible for in-state tuition regardless of the immigration status. Again, a lot of the people who were defined as Dreamers migrated to the US as children, so they did not have a choice. It's not like as a 6-year-old, you can tell parents, hey, no, I don't want to migrate, I want to stay here. It doesn't work that way. The second thing is it was a 4-year long campaign. Again, it was student-led, and then expertise of older individuals like myself to help students guide in the advocacy. And we initially started with just a lot of events, doing presentations at schools, doing workshops with our students, doing trainings, talking with a lot of educators who were very passionate, counselors who were like, hey, I want to help I want to be able to help my students and their family, but I don't know how. Can you help us? And they would just invite us, and it started to grow, and we were able to gather support through the years. And all of this is from 2018 to 2019. And then from 2019 to 2020, we were having days at the Capitol where students would share the stories with lawmakers. It wasn't about what a political party or where you stand is like. This is my journey. This is what I care about, and also their friends. And through that, we were able to build a relationship with people started to support. And they supported because they heard from people who were impacted directly. Again, it took us several years when we started in 2019 to be able to pass the bill in 2021. And this is just some of the picture. We were able to train students to speak in a committee hearing. A lot of them were high school students and they were nervous. We were able to have lawmakers explain to students, this is the process, this is what it means, this is technicality. And also a lot of students took leadership roles that they didn't know they could, leading whole groups of hundreds of students, leading groups of 20 or 30 individuals. It took a lot of students who are pictured in this, a lot of students who are pictured in these slides. And then finally, we were able to put it on the ballot, and it took us until the COVID pandemic. And that's why you see some of the students wearing masks, because we wanted to make sure that people were safe. And it was a beautiful journey because it started in 2018. We were able successfully to put it on the ballot until 2021. We had support from a lot of organizations, a lot of people, and overall people centered around this was something the right thing to do. It wasn't about anything outside of the issue. And then last year we come from what we did is just knocked on a lot of doors, made a lot of calls, got people involved, educate them what Prop 308 was, what would it mean to the community. And this year now we are working as hard as we can to make sure that we can get more funding for higher education. Our goal as Aliento is how do we make sure that all students who graduate from Arizona high schools are eligible for tuition-free university at the 3 universities. So our goal is that if you graduate from Arizona high school and you want to stay in the state, regardless of your status, you'd be eligible to not be charged any tuition or fees for your studies. Again, it will be a little bit different in terms of food, utilities, or room and board, but we want to make sure that every student has access to that tuition free. And that's what we're working on right now. We met with the governor a few weeks ago with our students, making sure that she heard why it was important to us and why we want to make sure that education is as accessible as possible. And then the last thing, if you all have any questions for me, I'll be love to answer them. If you have any comments, thoughts.
Yeah, we have a lot of questions. So the first question we got from a student is, how do I join Aliento?
Yes, so right here, the next slide, there's my email. If you can text it. The best way is to email me. We also have a podcast, but that's a little bit old and I'm on it. And we talk mostly half of the time about lunch and my love for chicken teriyaki. And if you want to listen to it to get the best advice here in the Phoenix area for chicken teriyaki, you can listen to the podcast.
Awesome. Next question is, what do you think the best thing is about being a DACA recipient?
The best thing that has been I've been able to value more everything that I get. I have such, like when I got my driver's license, I failed my driver's license test 3 times. The first time because I was like, I got this, I've been driving, I failed it. And the second time is like, I studied it really well. And I'm like, I got this. And then I didn't park correctly, the parallel parking. And the third time, I studied over too much and I didn't do well. But then I got it my 4th time. It just has shown me that perseverance is that if you don't get it right the first time, it doesn't matter if it's your driver's license, if it's your teacher certificate, if it's your education or whatever you do, you have to keep going. And that's the beauty of it, at least to me.
That's a really good answer. I too failed my driver's test. Okay. Oh, this is a great question. How can I get involved as an ally?
Again, we email me. We have programs for ally support. The vast majority, not about half of our folks who are with part of Aliento members are allies. And we wouldn't never got into this point or got this kind of support without our allies helping us out, lending their voice, opening up their communities, and sharing with places that we wouldn't be able to. So I'm always very thankful for allies because sometimes a lot of them have never had an experience or know people individually, but they just care. There's something that's called to. Email me, again, put in the subject line, hey, I'm an ally, I want to get involved, and we figure out a way you can get involved. We're doing a lot of projects right now, and I always welcome people. So if you have any questions, I love questions as well. Again, I was mentioning with former teacher, I thought high school math, sometimes we didn't have a lot of questions because people were a little bit confused with quadratic equations, but I love questions.
Awesome. Okay, this is a question from me. So
Yes.
I saw the arts and healing workshop.
Yes.
Can anyone attend those?
The arts and healing workshops are designed for people who are from mixed status.
Okay.
We do have programming for arts and healing that is for allies specifically as well. So for that one, you would have to tell me, and then I can set you the ones there because they're a little bit different. Because what we try to do is create a space where people can be and share that experience. And then the ones that are for everybody that you can join is the open mics. Again, if you have a talent, like either singing, dancing, or sharing jokes, we love comedians, or just want to be able to be in community. We have them every first Friday in downtown Phoenix.
Okay, this is the last question we got, which is, will the DACA program open again in the future?
Crossing my fingers. We are trying to advocate. We wrote about 450 comments, a lot of allies from a lot of teachers, a lot of counselors, a lot of supporters to the program to be reopened last year. We're gonna have to wait until it goes to the court system. We're waiting, so it will probably will know in the June of 2000 of this year whether it opens. If not, it'll probably be postponed until the summer of 2024. And there's a chance that the whole program itself ends. So we're also working with a lot of organizations and a lot of members to making sure that if that happens, that there's a substitute or something to help young people, as a lot of them are doing really well in the community. A lot of us are educators, lawyers, engineers, nurses, and just trying to contribute to our society.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jose.
Oh, thank you.
So wonderful to have you here. You guys, as always, this will transfer to an on-demand webinar within about 24 hours, and you're welcome to come check it out, share with your friends. We appreciate Jose being here so much and providing us with all that incredible information. And as always, be kind to one another. It matters.
Thank you.